Ever wondered how pandemics have shaped the course of human history? Greetings everyone. Today, we're diving deep into the catastrophic events that have tested humanity's resilience time and again. From the ancient plagues of Athens and Rome to the modern-day battles with HIV and COVID-19, pandemics have left indelible marks on our world. If you find this video interesting, please support us by hitting the like button. Now, let's get started. In recent years, particularly in 2020, the term pandemic became all too familiar as a new coronavirus plunged the world into chaos. A look back over our extensive history reveals numerous instances of pandemics, events that have recurrently tested human resilience over the millennia. Throughout history, pandemics have often led to significant societal changes and, in some cases, the destabilization of entire countries. First, let's look at the impact in Europe. Going back in time, around 430 BC, during the Peloponnesian War in ancient Greece, a virulent plague broke out in Athens. The plague had a devastating impact, claiming the lives of an estimated 100,000 individuals, roughly 25% of Athens' population at the time, all within a mere 3-year span. At that time, the Athenian historian Thucydides recorded the symptoms of the plague. In his record, he described the symptoms of the disease as high fever, diarrhea, and sometimes a rash, which some historians and scientists believe might have been a form of the plague. Furthermore, Thucydides wrote about the social impact of the plague epidemic, and his material shows the dire conditions of the time. While historically the plague was a devastating disease, today, due to advancements in modern medicine, it's largely treatable, though occasional cases still occur. Given the medical limitations of the period, the threat during those times must have been tremendous. According to Thucydides' sources, there was a widespread belief among the people of that time that they would not survive if they contracted the plague, and as a result, they committed crimes and rioted. He also observed that the plague's profound impact led to a sense of despair among the citizens, driving them to indifference regarding religion and law, due to the unpredictability of their survival. Now, can you guess which mighty empire was shaken to its core by a similar plague? That's right, the Roman Empire, from 165 to 180 AD. The Antonine plague, also known as the Galenic plague after Galen, the physician who described it, struck the Roman Empire from 165 to 180 AD. While the exact nature of the disease is unknown, some researchers speculate it may have been an outbreak of measles or smallpox. It's commonly believed that the plague was introduced to Rome by troops returning from distant campaigns, setting off widespread devastation in the subsequent years. At its peak, the Antonine plague reportedly killed a quarter of those infected, with a death toll estimated at 5 million people. Among the dead was the Roman Emperor Lucius Verus, whose death is said to have had a profound impact on the people of that time. Now that we have talked about the pandemic that occurred in Europe, let us turn our attention to other parts of the world. Have you ever heard of a disease called smallpox? Many of you have probably heard of it at least once. But smallpox is an extremely contagious disease caused by the variola virus. We do not know how the disease originated, or how rapidly it spread, but the earliest traces of smallpox were found in Egypt. The earliest potential evidence of smallpox, though debated among scholars, is traced back to ancient Egypt around 1145 BC, with potential signs of the disease observed on the mummy of Pharaoh Ramses V. Thus, smallpox, which is believed to have existed for a long time, gradually spread to Europe, and by the 17th century, European explorers and settlers had spread it to the Western Hemisphere. The smallpox brought by these explorers killed millions of indigenous people in the Americas. One prevalent theory suggests that smallpox significantly contributed to the collapse of the Aztec and Inca civilizations, among other factors. Despite the tremendous power of smallpox, research on smallpox was conducted around the world and a smallpox vaccine was developed, leading the WHO to declare smallpox eradicated in 1980. In other words, smallpox had been a threat to mankind for more than 3,000 years. From at least 1145 BC to 1980 AD, 3,000 years is a tremendously long time. In fact, another disease that has raged throughout human history, from ancient times to the present, is malaria. An infectious disease caused by a mosquito-borne parasite. Malaria, with its high drug resistance, infects 200 million people annually, remaining one of the most feared diseases in human history. The earliest mention of symptoms resembling malaria dates back to 2700 BC, which is over 1,500 years earlier than the potential evidence of smallpox around 1145 BC. This fact underscores the long-standing battle humanity has waged against infectious diseases. And it wasn't until the 1800s that the cause of this disease, malaria, and how it was transmitted were understood. Subsequent research has shown that malaria is transmitted mainly by mosquitoes. But even today it has not been eradicated, and the disease is spreading mainly in tropical areas of Africa and other parts of the world. Thus, malaria is a disease transmitted by mosquitoes that live close to us. But there are other famous plagues in human history that were spread by insects. That is the Black Death. Like malaria, the Black Death was primarily transmitted by fleas, often found on rats. The Black Death was primarily transmitted through the bites of fleas carrying the plague bacillus. These fleas were often hosted by rats, which helped spread the disease to humans. In addition, the Black Death spread especially in Europe, as fleas parasitized rats, which were then transported by merchant ships from Asia to Europe. The characteristic symptoms of the Black Death are high fever and hemorrhaging inside the body, which causes the body to appear black, hence the name. The severity of the disease is evident as death is embedded in its name. The damage was so devastating that it is said that between 30% and 60% of the total population of Europe at the time lost their lives. And it is believed to have killed a total of about 50 million people in Europe, Asia, and Africa. The role of rats and fleas in spreading the Black Death was uncovered in 1898 by French physician Paul-Louis Simond, revealing the diseases linked to these creatures. This discovery was the first time researchers showed the definitive cause of the plague, which led to the control of its spread and eventually to the development of a vaccine. Thus, the discovery of the bacterium and the development of a vaccine significantly mitigated the threat of the Black Death. Though it has not been completely eradicated, the Black Death was a significant event in human history, with a profound impact on societies of the time. It can be said that the ancient and medieval periods were particularly hard hit by the disease, and human populations were regularly greatly reduced. And around 1500, when the Black Death was raging in Europe, another plague was spreading across the sea in Mexico. The name of that plague was Cocolistli, which means deadly epidemic in the local Nahuatl language. Although the name of the disease is not familiar to many, Cocolistli was a pandemic in Mexico from 1545 to 1548, characterized by high fever and hemorrhaging, and although its cause is still unknown, it is thought that it may have been caused by a type of salmonella called paratyphoid C bacteria. It is estimated that between 5 and 15 million people died from Cocolistli, making this the largest pandemic in Mexican history. Thus, more than 500 years ago, there were literally pandemics all over the world. And the history of humanity and pandemics is by no means a thing of the past. Even in the 1900s, 400 years after the time of the Cocolistli, the history of mankind was still accompanied by pandemics. For instance, in 1918, the world faced the Spanish flu, caused by a potent strain of the H1N1 influenza virus. The infectiousness of the disease was so great that in 2 years, about 500 million people, or 1/3 of the world's population at the time, were infected with the Spanish flu, and another 50 million people are thought to have died. The Spanish flu has an unfortunate backstory. When you hear the word Spanish flu, you probably think it originated in Spain. But you would be wrong. In fact, the Spanish flu is believed to have first appeared in France, England, and China. There is another record that the first case of infection was reported on March 11, 1918, at an American military base, but in any case, it did not originate in Spain. So why is it called the Spanish flu? It has to do with World War I. The Spanish flu broke out at the height of World War I, Normally, the disease should have been widely reported in order to prevent the spread of infection, but at the time, reporting was extremely restricted due to the fear of information leaks during the war. Therefore, the Spanish flu was also rarely reported. However, Spain was a neutral country at the time, and Spanish newspapers were the only ones to report on the pandemic. As a result, the disease was given the name, Spanish flu, and was mistakenly thought to have originated in Spain. One can't help but feel a little sorry for Spain, having its name used for a disease that originated in a completely unrelated country, and then having that disease cause a pandemic on a global scale. As the 1980s progressed further into what is now clearly called the modern era, the battle between mankind and epidemics continued. The most prominent example is the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS. According to researchers, AIDS is believed to have originated in Africa in the 1920s, but it came to international attention with reports of cases in Los Angeles, USA, in 1981. Because the AIDS virus, HIV, attacks the immune system, people infected with HIV become weak and unable to fight infection. They are then susceptible to developing various diseases and are diagnosed with AIDS when they develop them. AIDS was feared as an immune-destroying disease in the early days of the outbreak, because there was no effective treatment at the beginning of the epidemic. According to the WHO, about 75 million people have been infected with HIV since the epidemic began, and about 32 million people have lost their lives. But now, with the spread of high retroviral treatments and other therapies, many people infected with HIV are able to lead normal, healthy lives thanks to those treatments. Moreover, the outbreak had a profound impact on global culture, particularly in America. This is because when the AIDS epidemic first began, there were many cases among homosexuals. Early in the epidemic, the LGBTQ community faced significant stigmatization, partly due to AIDS being pejoratively and inaccurately referred to as gay cancer, which fueled public prejudice and discrimination. While such prejudice and discrimination have significantly decreased, they have not completely disappeared. As with the misconceptions that surrounded the Spanish flu, the initial misunderstandings about AIDS underscore the dangerous consequences of misinformation in times of health crises. The first epidemic of the 2000s was the swine flu, which was mainly caused by the outbreak of swine flu between 2009 and 2010. Occurring mainly between 2009 and 2010, the flu was pandemic and is thought to have killed more than 200,000 people worldwide. Then, in 2019, a new coronavirus broke out, and as we all know, this pandemic has drastically changed human life. When you think about it this way, it seems as if infectious diseases continue to change as well, as if in step with human evolution. The many pandemics that have occurred around the world so far, diseases for which no cure has been established even with modern medicine, are frightening, but at the same time, when I think about how we have overcome so many crises, I realize how strong we humans are. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful content. Take care and see you in the next video. Goodbye.